Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Patrick Cotter, who's the founder of Cotter Financial Group, and we'll be talking about planning for a proactive retirement to ensure longevity. Patrick, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure.
And look forward to talking to you because it's always neat to hear people's perspectives on topics. And I know you've spent many years in the industry, and I want to hear how you are serving your clients and teaching them on these topics. But before we dive in, give us a little bit of your story and background, and how did you get into the financial services industry?
Sure. Well, Mike, I got into the financial service industry sort of by accident because I graduated from college in 1987. I went through college as an engineering graduate. And so I'm a big math and science guy. I love numbers. And I took a job coming out of college as a financial advisor / stockbroker. And I did that for a couple of years. Then I got more into the insurance side, the protection side. And it turned out that my skill set I was very good at building relationships. So I got into the corporate side of the insurance business in about 1990. And I always had a dream of retiring from corporate life at the age of 60. So I spent a little over 30 years on the corporate side of the insurance business and actually retired in met my goal, retired in July of 2024. And it's a bit of a long story on how I got into the retirement income market. But when I was on the corporate side, my dream was always to be a teacher. I was sort of following in my father's footsteps. And so I went out and got a few more designations and certifications and opened up in 2024 a retirement income planning, concierge-level boutique-style firm, which is Cotter Financial Group, and been loving it ever since.
You know, it's neat, when people feel forced to do something, it feels like a job, but you retired and was like, you know what, here's where my passion is going to kick in. So I'm going to start this. And I think that's spectacular. That's
correct. And my passion comes from real world experiences and things that I noticed about the industry, the way that I was personally treated because on the corporate side, even though I had all the licenses and I was not able to be my own advisor, so I saw many weaknesses in the industry. And then I looked at how my parents had been treated and were being treated. And at the back of my mind, I said, there's got to be a better way. There has to be something different out there. And it wasn't until after the death of my father about 6 years ago, when I was helping my mother going through all the paperwork and all the finances and looking over their accounts, I'm like saying, if my mother did not have me, how would she have survived? With everything that goes along with longevity planning on the financial side, on the emotional side. And that's when I really said, something's got to change. What do I need to do? And here we are today.
Wow. Yeah. That's when you can layer in personal passion with a family, the drive of family to go, you know what, this is what I experienced in my family and I want others not to experience it, or I want others to experience the same thing. That's super, super powerful. And today we're talking about ensuring longevity and proactive retirement. So talk a little bit about how proactive planning helps make sure that we don't just outlive retirement savings, and check the box, but you need to plan ahead of time, not be reactive. What does that look like, and how do you start that conversation with your clients?
Well, I do a lot because I'm an educational financial planning firm. I do a lot of educational workshops, And I always open up my workshops, Mike, with a story. And everybody, whether you're 80 years old, 70, 60, 50, 40, everybody knows the story of Alice in Wonderland.
Yep.
So there's a part in Alice in Wonderland when Alice is skipping down the path and she comes along a fork in the road where there's, four different forks. And the Cheshire cat is sitting up on the top of the tree, as you recall. And he looks down at her and he says, Alice, actually, Alice looks up to him and says, which path should I take? And the Cheshire cat's answer is, well, where do you want to go? And she says, I don't know. He goes, well, then any path will do. So
Wow.
that story always resonated with me because when I look at people and I've been doing my research on retirement planning is most people don't know what the end result is going to look like. So I always start with my planning with the end result in mind. And so when I engage with a prospect or a client, there's two ways you can look at retirement planning. Number one is just the pure financial, just the numbers, which is probably the way most people think of. There was a commercial on years ago from ING, and you probably remember this as "What's your number?" That was the big commercial.
Yeah.
What's your number? Everybody's trying to save for a number. Well, that's fine and dandy, but once you have your number, what do you want your retirement to look like? Let's take a look at the human side of retirement planning and what do you want retirement to be? Mike, how many times you get to retire in your lifetime?
Well, most people would say one, but you've already got that box checked.
Right. And isn't when you think about retirement, is like, what is the scariest thing that you may ever do in your life? And if you don't think that retirement's one of them, then I would tell you to think again. Yeah. And I'm not talking about, putting your head into a bucket full of snakes. I'm talking about you wake up every single day for 40 years. And what do? You have breakfast, you have your cup of coffee,
go to work.
and you go to work. And what are most people doing? They're trading their time for dollars. And it's with those dollars that we're paying our mortgage and paying our bills and sending our kids to school and buying clothes and food and shelter and everything else. But all of a sudden you hit that retirement age. And this is what people don't think about, is like all of a sudden you wake up one day and it's like, I don't have to go to work today. What am I going to do? So, Mike, in my workshops, I always start out by, with that question in mind. And I have a piece of paper and I said, okay, what day of the week? And these are people that are still working, they're pre-retirees. And I said, okay, what day of the week do you spend the most money in your life right now? The answer is Saturday.
Yeah.
So then I followed that up with is, okay, just imagine every single day for the rest of your life is Saturday.
Meaning you can't spend as much money when you've punched the clock and you're at work, so your Saturday is free and you're spending money. Well, what if that's every single day in retirement? You might be spending more money than you would assume.
You're going to spend more money because you have to keep yourself busy. So I decided that I'm making it my mission. It's my passion to make sure. And when I do my workshops, is I ask a lot of questions because I do a lot of listening. And the biggest question I said, what is everybody's biggest fear while they're in retirement? And bar none, overwhelming response is outliving my money.
Yeah.
So people don't want to they don't know what to do on how to plan for actually living a fulfilled retirement and doing everything they want to do, but yet also have that peace of mind knowing that I can do this and I'll never run out of money. And there are techniques and strategies that we can implement, that we do implement, to make sure that people will never run out of money.
And I know that's probably enough content to fill a weekend seminar 3 days long, but let's start with what's like a 30,000 foot overview of the steps that people can take. Just get started, to kind of start securing their retirement, so that doesn't happen.
Certainly. So when we talk about the various risks of retirement, and we already spoke about that, longevity risk always comes out as the number one risk, but there's also other risks that are involved to make sure that somebody has a great retirement. We also have market risk. There's inflation risk. There's withdrawal rate risk and sequence of returns risk, because most people that come to my workshops, their biggest source of their savings are in a 401k, or they've rolled it into an IRA. So they have to know, at what percentage can I take the money out, and what if the market goes down? There's tax rate risk and legislative risk. And then another big one is there's healthcare risk or long-term care risk. And then there's always mortality risk. What if I die? What if I die too soon? How are my loved ones going to be able to get by? And so we address all these various factors in the workshops. But you asked me what are some of the things that people can do? Well, number one is everybody should work with a professional, a specialist that specializes in retirement income planning. So I mentioned earlier, I went out and got some additional designations. I am actually a retirement income certified professional. I went back, got a designation. It's sort of like, why should somebody deal with me over just their normal broker or the guy at the bank? Well, it's easy, because let's just say, Mike, for example, that you needed to have your gallbladder removed, or you need to have open heart surgery. Would you go to your primary care physician, or would you go
Probably not.
Bro, you would go seek a specialist. Yeah. Why? Your primary care physician, he went through the same medical school. He's got the same education. He did a rotation in surgery, but that's not his specialty. Well, it's in my opinion, there's two areas and we are in a DIY world right now.
Yeah.
Because of ChatGPT and Gemini and Google and everything else, everybody thinks that they can just look it up and do it themselves. Well, as far as I know, ChatGPT is not an advisor. You can get information, but then what are you going to do with it? The same way you can get information on a medical condition that I don't feel well. Let me Google, what's wrong with me. Might give you 2 or 3 options. Then you're going to need to see a specialist to make sure that you're going to be okay. Why? Because when it comes to finances, if you try and do it yourself, when it comes to retirement planning, there is no margin for error. If you make a mistake, you are cutting off and potentially cutting off years of retirement income. And the resources, the tools that a specialist has, you just can't get that online on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
You're
never going to replace human interaction, personal experience, the cognitive, you mentioned that your grandkids had this. So what if we did? I just think that AI is spectacular for helping automate some repetitive tasks, but you need to have that human touch. And I think that is huge.
Yes.
You've mentioned a whole litany of risks, and one of the biggest fears people have is the longevity risk is outliving money. So how does addressing that risk contribute to peace of mind? Because here's what I would suspect. Like when you go, hey, here's my goals for the upcoming year. It's, or I've laid out, the path forward and the plan. It kind of makes you feel like, okay, good. Well, if you've put together a plan to address longevity risk, and okay, as long as things go well and we're going to keep checking into the plan, then we're going to have enough money to make it. Talk a little bit about how that longevity risk contributes to giving your clients peace of mind.
Well, I believe you have interviewed a mentor of mine in the past, a gentleman by the name of Tom Hegna.
Yeah.
And Tom Hegna wrote a famous best-selling book called Paychecks and Playchecks. And I bought into that philosophy, hook, line, and sinker. And sort of what was the evolution of me retiring from corporate America and starting this practice on my own was you really have to ask yourself a question your success and happiness in your retirement is going to depend on, number one, is how much guaranteed lifetime income do you have? And then number two is, have you taken the key retirement risk, which is those other risks, off the table? And how have you done that? And so you ask yourself, well, how much retirement income do I need? And then the other question is what do I want that retirement income to do for me?
Yeah.
So you need to know. I make sure that everybody, when they come in to see me, we look at what their budget is. How much do you need? What is your mortgage payment? What are your costs? What do we absolutely have to cover today? That's for the rest, pretty much for the rest of your life. And that's what we need to cover with some source of guaranteed lifetime income. And a lot of people will say, well, I get Social Security. Well, the bottom line is 98% of the people that come and see me, they don't know how much Social Security they're going to be receiving. And the other problem is they always make a mistake on the timing of taking Social Security. And that's another mistake that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars through the course of retirement. But Social Security is another topic that I could spend, because I am also a certified Social Security claiming specialist also. So that's another one of my specialties, but where most people get wrong. And it's costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, not just for yourself and income, but also for your spouse and your kids.
And that one piece, like you said, you could spend days on that topic, but I'll just ask from a 60,000 foot view on Social Security claiming. If you do it wrong, that impacts outliving your money. Because you might think that you're going to get X number of dollars and need it to last X time frame. But if you didn't properly set up or claim or set up your Social Security the right way, you could be leaving money on the table. And so that's an important consideration, a big bullet point with a big yellow highlight, that you need to put on that one to make sure that's done right, to ensure that retirement planning is going to get you to the age you need to be without running out of money. I think that's a big point you bring up.
Yeah, it's huge, because there's in almost every single plan that I do, when we do the Social Security analysis and we look at somebody's lifestyle it's the lifestyle that they want to maintain all through retirement, there's always a gap there. And so it's up to me, it's up to individuals like me to figure out how can we maybe shift some assets around? How can we fill that gap so an individual does not so they can retire when they want to retire and they don't have to go back to work? Because one of the problems that people don't realize when they start claiming, if they take Social Security at 62 and go back to work, you're you're hurting your Social Security for the rest of your life, because there's certain tests that have to be done. That if you make $1 more than what you're allowed, you're being penalized on the Social Security side. So we're not going to, I'm not going to sabotage this interview on talking about Social Security, but I will recommend anybody that wants an analysis on their Social Security claiming strategy, give me a call.
Yeah.
Because it is important.
It really is. And let's just kind of wrap up with this question regarding the longevity and outliving your money. What are some of the common misconceptions people have when you're having this type of conversation with them, where they assume one thing, but really when you clarify it, they go, ooh, thank you for bringing the clarity. That's a good point.
That's a fantastic question. So the biggest misconception is, I have Social Security and that's going to be enough. And trust me, if somebody wants to have a lifestyle that calls for $6,000 to $8,000 a month in income, but their Social Security, but even between them and their wife is only, $4,000, $5,000, there's already a shortfall there. And then what people don't realize is when one of the spouses die, all of your expenses stay the same, except maybe food costs go down a little. But do they really? Because now if you're alone, you're probably going out to eat more, so your your cost might go up. But guess what? You're only keeping the larger of the two checks, so your income automatically gets split in half. And then what happens? Guess what, Mike? What people don't realize, this is again why you need to talk to a specialist, is now most likely you're going to be put into a higher income tax bracket at the same time.
Yeah.
Again, that's another conversation for another podcast.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's huge, and I think that if you were to lay out all of the factors and all of the things that need to be done, it feels overwhelming. But when you have a plan and when you address it sequentially and have someone guiding you through, it really helps to give you that peace of mind to know that everything's put together the right way. Well, Patrick, that has been really helpful to really put this together in that clear way that you've been explaining it. If it brings up in someone's mind that's listening to this, hey, how would it work if, or what would my situation look like, or tell me more about the Social Security, what's the best way they can learn a little bit more and then also reach out and connect with you?
Certainly. Everyone can certainly go on to my website, which is www.cotter, C-O-T-T-E-R, Cotter Financial Group, .com. What I will offer for anybody, if they mention that you heard about me on this interview, is when I mentioned about the resources that I have, we can do a lot of analysis. I am a fee-based planner, but anybody that calls and, hey, I heard you on your interview with Mike Saunders, I will do all the analysis, give you what your retirement score is, do a Social Security analysis. I'll do it completely complimentary.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you today.
My pleasure.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.